When knowledge was a crime. For most of human history, knowledge was not a gift. It was a threat. To ask the wrong question could cost you your career, your freedom, or your life. Truth did not belong to those who discovered it. It belonged to kings, priests, and institutions that claimed authority over reality itself. Science, as we know it today, did not exist. There were no laboratories filled with instruments, no journals waiting to publish bold ideas. There was only permission and punishment. For centuries, one belief shaped everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. The earth stood still at the center of creation. The sun, the moon, and the stars were believed to revolve around humanity, placed there by divine design. This idea was not merely scientific. It was political. It justified power, hierarchy, and control. If Earth was the center of the cosmos, then those who ruled Earth ruled something sacred. To challenge that belief was not curiosity. It was rebellion. In the early 16th century, a quiet man began to doubt what everyone else accepted without question. His name was Nicolaus Copernicus. He was not a revolutionary by nature. He was a scholar, a mathematician, a man deeply aware of the danger of standing out. But as he studied the movements of the planets, the numbers refused to obey tradition. The heavens were not behaving as they should. Planetary paths were awkward, forced into complex explanations that felt artificial. Copernicus noticed that everything suddenly made sense if one shocking idea was allowed to exist. The Earth was not stationary. It was moving around the sun. This was not just a scientific adjustment. It was an existential wound. If Earth moved, then humanity was no longer the center of the universe. We were passengers, not rulers. Copernicus understood the danger of this thought. He spent decades refining his work in silence, sharing it only with trusted friends. He delayed publication not because he doubted his calculations, but because he feared the consequences. Only as death approached did he allow his book, On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres, to be published. The revolution began as a whisper. At first, the world barely noticed. But ideas, once born, have a way of finding their moment. And that moment arrived with a man who refused to whisper. Galileo Galilei. Galileo lived in a time when authority depended on tradition, not evidence. But Galileo had something new, something dangerous. A telescope. With it, he did what scholars before him had not. He looked. What he saw shattered the old universe. The moon was not a perfect sphere, it had mountains and craters. Jupiter had moons orbiting it, proving not everything revolved around Earth. Venus showed phases that could only exist if it circled the sun. The heavens were flawed. The universe was not built for human comfort. The Earth was not special. Galileo did not hide these discoveries. He published them. He spoke about them publicly. He invited others to look for themselves. That was his mistake. The Church did not fear ignorance. It feared evidence. If ordinary people could see the truth with their own eyes, authority would crumble. Galileo was summoned to Rome, accused of heresy, and placed on trial by the Inquisition in 1633. An old man stood alone against an institution that defined reality. Faced with imprisonment and torture, Galileo recanted his views publicly. He was sentenced to house arrest for the rest of his life. His books were banned. His name became a warning. Science had spoken. Power had answered. Yet the truth did not disappear. Telescopes did not stop working. Planets did not return to their assigned places. The universe did not apologize. Galileo's body was confined, but his ideas escaped. The Copernican revolution marked the first great fracture between authority and evidence. It proved that truth could exist independently of power, and that knowledge did not require permission. From that moment forward, science would no longer ask whether an idea was acceptable. It would ask only one question: genius, rivalry, and dangerous ideas. Once knowledge escaped control, it could never be contained again. But freedom did not make science peaceful. It made it human. The age that followed Galileo's rebellion is often remembered as the Enlightenment, a time of reason, progress, and intellectual courage. Yet behind the polished image of rational thought lay obsession, jealousy, fear, and rivalry. Science was no longer hunted by religion alone. It was torn apart from within. At the center of this new world stood Isaac Newton. Newton did not simply improve science. He redefined reality. His laws of motion explained how objects moved. His theory of gravity revealed an invisible force shaping the universe. For the first time, the heavens and the earth obeyed the same rules. The universe became a machine, precise, predictable, and governed by mathematics. But Newton's brilliance came with a darker side. He was secretive, paranoid, and fiercely protective of his ideas. He believed knowledge was power, and power must be defended at all costs. Nowhere was this more evident than in the invention of calculus, the mathematical language needed to describe motion and change. At the same time Newton was developing calculus in isolation, another mind across Europe reached the same breakthrough. His name was Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Leibniz published his work openly, sharing his ideas with the world. Newton did not. When the similarities became undeniable, Newton accused Leibniz of theft. The dispute escalated into one of the most bitter conflicts in scientific history. Accusations replaced evidence. National pride fueled hostility. Scientific societies took sides. Newton, holding immense influence in England, ensured history would remember him as the sole creator. Leibniz died disgraced, his reputation destroyed. Only centuries later did historians uncover the truth. Both men had independently discovered calculus. Science advanced. Fairness did not. As knowledge grew more powerful, its consequences became more unsettling. Science was no longer just explaining the universe, it was redefining humanity's place within it. This shift reached its breaking point with Charles Darwin. Darwin did not seek controversy. He was a careful observer, a collector of evidence, a man deeply uneasy with the implications of his own conclusions. During his voyage on the HMS Beagle, he studied life in all its forms, fossils, animals, plants, and patterns that repeated across continents. Slowly, a terrifying idea emerged. Life was not fixed. Species were not designed as they appeared. They changed. Through natural selection, organisms adapted to survive. Over vast stretches of time, small changes accumulated into entirely new forms of life, including humans. Darwin understood the danger of this idea immediately. If humans evolved through the same natural process as animals, then humanity was not divinely separate. We were part of nature, not its masters. Darwin delayed publication for more than 20 years. He feared not scientific criticism, but moral outrage. He feared being blamed for destroying meaning, faith, and purpose itself. When On the Origin of Species was finally published in 1859, the reaction was explosive. Some scientists embraced it. Many attacked it. Religious institutions condemned it as an assault on human dignity. Newspapers mocked it. Public debates turned vicious. Darwin became a symbol of threat. Yet evidence refused to disappear. Fossils, genetics, and biology all pointed in the same direction. Evolution was not an opinion. It was reality. Still, acceptance came slowly, and at great personal cost. Darwin withdrew from public life, plagued by illness and stress. He spent much of his later years in isolation, burdened by the weight of what he had revealed. The Enlightenment had promised progress through reason. But Chapter 2 of Science revealed a harder truth: knowledge does not arrive cleanly. It arrives tangled in ego, fear, and conflict. Genius did not make scientists noble. Truth did not make them kind. But despite rivalries and resistance, something irreversible had happened. Humanity had crossed a line. We had learned that truth does not depend on comfort, and meaning does not depend on tradition. Science was no longer just a tool. It was a mirror, and what it reflected would soon become even more disturbing. When reality itself began to break. By the end of the 19th century, science appeared complete. The universe, as Newton described it, was elegant and predictable. Every motion followed a rule. Every effect had a cause. Many scientists believed there was little left to discover, only minor details to refine. Humanity, it seemed, finally understood reality. That confidence would not survive the 20th century. Small anomalies began to appear in experiments, tiny inconsistencies that refused to disappear. Light behaved strangely. Energy arrived in discrete packets instead of smooth waves. Time itself seemed unwilling to behave. The old universe was cracking. Into this uncertainty stepped Albert Einstein, a man who did not belong to the scientific elite. He worked as a clerk in a Swiss patent office, far from prestigious laboratories. Yet in 1905, a year later called his miracle year, Einstein published papers that dismantled classical physics. He proposed something radical: space and time were not separate. They were woven together. Motion changed time. Gravity was not a force acting at a distance, it was the bending of space itself. Time could slow. Lengths could shrink. Mass could become energy. The universe was no longer absolute. It depended on perspective. Einstein's theories were difficult to accept not because they were complex, but because they were deeply unsettling. There was no universal clock. No fixed stage on which reality played out. Everything depended on motion, speed, and observation. Then came a realization with terrifying implications. E=mc² meant that matter itself was stored energy. An idea meant to explain stars would soon reshape warfare. As Einstein redefined the large-scale universe, another revolution emerged at the smallest scales. Quantum mechanics revealed a world so strange that even its creators struggled to believe it. Particles behaved like waves. They existed in multiple states at once. Observation did not reveal reality, it altered it. Certainty collapsed. One of the most disturbing discoveries was that outcomes could only be predicted in probabilities, not certainties. Reality, at its foundation, was not deterministic. It was random. Einstein despised this idea. He famously declared, "God does not play dice with the universe." But experiments repeatedly proved otherwise. The universe did not care about human comfort. As these theories matured, science crossed a moral threshold. What began as abstract mathematics transformed into unimaginable power. During World War II, physicists realized that splitting the atom could release energy on an unprecedented scale. The Manhattan Project was born. Scientists who once pursued truth now raced against time. Fear drove them forward, the fear that someone else would build the weapon first. When the atomic bomb was finally tested, its creators were stunned by its power. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the project's scientific leader, later recalled a line from ancient scripture. "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." When atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, science changed forever. Knowledge had left the laboratory and entered history. The same equations that described the universe had erased cities in seconds. The question was no longer whether something could be done. The question was whether it should. Yet even in the aftermath of destruction, science continued its quiet betrayals. One of the most important discoveries in biology, the structure of DNA, was announced in 1953. James Watson and Francis Crick received fame, awards, and history's applause. But a crucial piece of evidence had been taken without consent. Rosalind Franklin, a brilliant scientist, produced the X-ray image that made the discovery possible. Her contribution was minimized, her voice ignored. She died before recognition could reach her. Once again, truth advanced. Once again, justice lagged behind. By the mid-20th century, science had stripped away illusion after illusion. Time was flexible. Matter was energy. Reality was uncertain. Knowledge could save or annihilate. The universe was no longer a comforting machine. It was powerful, indifferent, and dangerous. And humanity, for the first time, had the tools to reshape it, or destroy itself. The final revolution would not come from physics or biology. It would come from something far closer to home. The human mind itself. The revolution that never ends. Every scientific revolution leaves behind a question. After Galileo, it was whether truth could survive power. After Newton and Darwin, it was whether humanity could accept its place in nature. After Einstein and the atomic age, it became whether knowledge could be controlled. Now, in our time, the question is far more unsettling. Can intelligence exist without us? The modern revolution does not arrive with telescopes or equations carved into paper. It arrives quietly, through code, data, and machines that learn. Artificial intelligence is not a single invention, it is a shift in how intelligence itself is defined. For centuries, thinking was humanity's final boundary. Tools amplified strength. Machines multiplied speed. But judgment, creativity, and learning remained human. That boundary is dissolving. AI systems now recognize faces, predict behavior, diagnose disease, write music, and generate language. They do not follow fixed instructions alone. They adapt. They improve. They surprise their creators. This is why fear has returned. The fear is not new. It echoes the past. When Galileo pointed his telescope to the sky, people feared chaos. When Darwin explained evolution, people feared meaninglessness. When atomic power was unlocked, people feared extinction. Every revolution feels like an ending. AI feels different only because it touches identity itself. If a machine can think, then what does it mean to be human? The danger is not that machines will become evil. The danger is that they will become powerful reflections of their creators. Algorithms inherit the values, biases, and priorities of the societies that build them. Intelligence without wisdom does not become neutral, it becomes amplified. History has taught this lesson repeatedly. The atomic bomb was not evil knowledge. It was knowledge placed into a world unprepared for its consequences. The same is true now. AI is not a villain waiting to awaken. It is a mirror, one that reflects ambition, fear, greed, and hope. And like all mirrors, it does not lie. The greatest mistake would be to believe this revolution can be stopped. It cannot. Scientific revolutions never ask permission. They emerge from curiosity, necessity, and competition. Attempts to suppress them have always failed. The only choice has ever been how humanity responds. Will intelligence be used to concentrate power, or to distribute it? Will automation erase dignity, or free creativity? Will knowledge deepen inequality, or expand opportunity? These are not technical questions. They are moral ones. The secret history of science reveals a pattern. Every breakthrough begins in isolation, is resisted by authority, misunderstood by society, and eventually reshapes civilization. The cost is always paid by individuals, those ignored, silenced, punished, or forgotten. Yet progress continues. Not because humans are wise, but because curiosity is relentless. Science does not promise comfort. It promises clarity. It strips away illusions and forces humanity to confront itself. The Earth was not the center. Humans were not separate from nature. Reality was not stable. Intelligence is not exclusive. Each revelation wounds pride before expanding understanding. And still, we continue. The future will not be decided by what machines can do. It will be decided by what humans choose to value. The greatest danger is not artificial intelligence surpassing human intelligence. It is human intelligence refusing responsibility. Galileo was silenced, but the universe moved anyway. Darwin was mocked, but life evolved anyway. Atomic power was unleashed, and history was rewritten. The revolution never ends because truth never rests. Somewhere, right now, a new idea is forming, quietly, dangerously, invisibly. It will challenge something we believe is unshakable. It will be resisted. It will be feared. And one day, it will be obvious. The secret history behind the biggest scientific revolutions is not just about discovery. It is about courage, the courage to question, to observe, and to accept uncomfortable truths. The final question is not whether the next revolution will arrive. It already has. The question is whether humanity will be ready when it fully reveals itself.